Jill's here. Great. Hi, Jill. Or no, wrong. Hi, Rebecca. This is Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. All right. We're going to share my screen. Rebecca, this is Jessica. Just a few housekeeping things. So I have your polls ready to go. You can just indicate to me at what point you want me to send them out, and we'll get those out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Quick question, Jessica.
Yes.
Do you have a preference on whether we do questions at the end or throughout?
It is your, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay.
Do you know? Because, well.
I actually, if we can do it kind of throughout, I think that's just a preference I have.
Okay, so I'll say that at the beginning. I'll kind of introduce you, just briefly say a few things about the conference and a couple housekeeping, but I'll encourage people to send their questions through chat and that will address them throughout the talk.
Perfect. And will you be monitoring chat or?
I am, yep. So I'm on as a monitor and I have Jim West who will join as a moderator as well. So we'll be monitoring chat, keeping a list of questions.
Perfect.
Do you want me to interrupt you if a chat comes up? And
absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Bastian, and I'm the Digital Services Librarian at Illinois Central College. I'm also part of the ForwardFocus planning team, and it is my pleasure to be with you this morning. So thank you for attending ForwardFocus. This year's theme is the voice of the student. And the voice of the student, it echoes into every corner of community college librarianship. But how do we make sure that we're really listening? So that's kind of the fundamental question. And today we're going to hear how our presenters serve the needs of their students. And this morning we have Rebecca Funke from Des Moines Area Community College. Her presentation is entitled Circulating Access, Lending Hotspots to Help Students Succeed. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. And Rebecca, I'm going to have you correctly say your last name because I'm sure I did not do you justice.
It's good. It's Funke, actually.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure about that.
Yep, kind of a crazy last name.
Yeah, well, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Absolutely. Okay, so welcome to everybody. My name is Rebecca Funke, and I am the Director of Library Resources for Des Moines Area Community College, as Jessica mentioned. And I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint here. And hang on a sec. All right, are you guys seeing that? Seeing my opening slide?
So not yet. If you click on the green share button, it looks like a little briefcase with an arrow, and then select your slides.
Yep, and I'm not, hang on a sec. I've lost that option.
Oh, let me make sure. So it, did the toolbar jump to the top? Can you see it at the top of the?
Nope, I'm not seeing the group either. Let's see. Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, it was hiding behind.
It does hide, yes.
Okay. So let's start this again. There, that should be good. Hopefully.
We're still not seeing it.
Really?
Do you want to send them to me quickly in an email and I can try to figure out?
Yep.
What? That's my notes. No, those are my notes. For some reason, I decided to take them on the little sheets. I don't know how well this is working.
Oh, so Rebecca, I do think you're sharing your screen now.
Okay. All right. Good?
Yes, great.
Perfect. Okay.
And then just to the participants, if you just remember to mute your mic as we get started here, that would be great. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Sorry, I'm working with two screens here, and I think I had, anyway, minimized on one side. So I'm Rebecca Funke, and I'm at the Des Moines Area Community College in Iowa, just north of Des Moines. And we have been actually working with Hotspots for, this is our third year. And we have had really pretty positive impact and success with our program. And so I know I see a lot of times folks are on listservs and asking about it. So I'm always really anxious to share what we've done because we really have had really good luck with it. And so I'm thrilled to be here today and share some of the successes that we have as also, as well as sharing some things that we've learned that maybe you'll be able to pick up from and take away with you if any of you are thinking about doing this at your library. I'm curious if we can do a poll. Jessica has one ready for us. And I'm curious, two things, whether or not you have ever used a hotspot before, or if you currently are offering hotspots or thinking about doing hotspots in your library. And just when you get a chance, if you can answer those. Curious to know kind of who's in our mix. So that's great. So quite a few of you have actually used a hotspot before. That's fantastic. When we started looking into this, that was not something that I had done. So I knew what they were, but hadn't used one. And so a lot of my staff hadn't either. So it was a bit of a learning experience for us. This was also something that our students, to a large degree, I think, were unfamiliar with. So there was a little bit of a learning at that end as well. Okay. Thank you for that poll. And if you get a chance to do the other poll, I'd be curious to know on who is offering this in your library. I think at least one of you is currently offering that. And hopefully you'll pick up some new things if you are, and we'll share some of your own tips or own questions as they come up. But it looks like maybe quite a few of you are not doing this, so maybe you're going to be considering this as an option. As we go through, please feel free to put questions in the chat box, and we'll try to answer those as we go. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to answer those questions right on the spot within the context of what we're discussing. So feel free to go ahead and put those in. Okay, looks like we had about 12%, or sorry, 12 of you are not currently offering it, and we have 3 that are, so fantastic. Okay, so we're going to move forward and be mindful of time here. So of course, I'd love to be able to tell you that we launched this initiative after looking at all kinds of data, and that this was a data-driven decision and pilot, but it wasn't. But that's whether or not people have access to the internet is not something that we currently survey in any means at our college, and so we don't track that data. So it was something that really we maybe kind of had a gut instinct on, but no actual hard data on it. But we certainly know from working in community colleges in your areas, I'm sure as well as here, that the internet is becoming a vastly critical component for students to have access to. 68% of all degree granting public institutions offer some kind of online program or courses. Iowa specifically ranks 33 in internet connectivity. We have lots of rural students here. Our college is actually centered kind of around Des Moines, but we have 6 campuses, and that all those campuses are spread out. We have a few around the metro, but then we have some in very rural areas. And so connectivity is really an issue. But again, we didn't necessarily really have hard data on it. And so it was just more of a kind of a gut feeling that we knew that there was an issue, and that perhaps maybe this was a service that our students would appreciate. At some point during the spring or summer of 2016, I ran across I don't know if it was a listserv or an article about San Juan College offering hotspots. And I was really excited about it because as you look at the bullets that are on the screen, I'm sure these all speak to your own experiences. We hear these comments frequently from students that are having to try to make time to get into the library so that they can access our resources, or rescheduling events or work or class around work so that they have access to that. So we knew it was probably something that we could offer and that students would be interested in, but we didn't really know for sure. And so I reached out to Chris that summer of 2016, and he was more than gracious to share all of his policies and ideas and how they got started at their college, at their library. They had a small program. They are also very rural, and they had just started maybe about a semester prior to my phone call. And so they had had some really good success as well. And so I was excited to kind of bite the bullet and start doing some investigating and see if this could be something that we could do at our end. First thing I needed to do was visit with my boss, of course, who was the executive director of student services, wanted to get a sense of what she thought, if she had any kind of concerns, because I didn't really want to go and dig in to the whole discovery process of how this might work and start looking at policies and procedures and availability of devices, if she absolutely had a real concern or flat out said no. So luckily she was absolutely game and on board. My next conversation was then with our head of IT. Same thing, I wanted to make sure that he didn't have any concerns or any questions that we needed to figure out. And he was also ready to go. And I think one of the things that that was helpful for both of them is that I had a little bit of an outline of what I thought this service might look like. So I at least had something to present to them. And also one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that we did was actually provide our technology use policy to students as they check out devices. So that the use of this device was tied to the college technology use policy that we have. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Then I contacted our rep. Our college actually has a contract with Verizon for cell phones. And so I reached out to our vendor rep to inquire how this might work. Do they work with other libraries? Have they done this? And luckily for us, we had a fantastic rep who came and met with us, talked to myself and the staff about how this works, all the devices, all that kind of stuff. So I felt like we were maybe ready to go and jump on board. So in the spring of 2017, we did a very small pilot start to this service. And our timing really probably wasn't maybe the best time to do it. We actually did our pilot just a few weeks out from finals. We finished spring term in early May, and we didn't actually start our pilot until about the first part of April. So we didn't really have a lot of data and time necessarily to really gather the usage that we thought we might see. But we did run, of course, the pilot into the summer, which helped a little bit. But that would be something that you might think about as you're contemplating this, is when a good time to do a pilot would be. For us, we knew fall was out. Fall is just our busiest time. And so by the time we got around to it, late spring was just kind of the option that we had. So we went ahead and went with it. But anyway, we started out with a small pilot. We only did it on our campus, at the Ankeny campus. That's the main campus where I'm at. Decided to pilot it there. If we decided this would be something we would go with, we would expand it to all of the other 5 campuses as well. We talked with Verizon. They showed us the devices. They came in, they talked to us about how we get these devices, how we order them, costs. So some of the highlights are there on the screen. The data does reset at the 15th of every month, even though these devices are quote unquote unlimited use, unlimited data provided by Verizon. We did notice that with the first batch of devices, they did start to throttle at 25 gigs used. So it was helpful to know when the data reset. And so it does that on the 15th of each month. Now that we have newer devices, it's less of an issue, but we do see some of that throttling still happening with some of the older devices. The devices themselves have cost us nothing. That's just the way Verizon has it set up. We have an educational contract with them, the state of Iowa does. And so I don't know if that helps cut the cost for us, but the devices themselves are no charge. We did have to buy the cases. Those are about $15, $20 from Amazon, and they are a really tight squeeze. I'll show you a couple of photos here on the next slide, and you'll get to see how tight that is. But that was really our expense, was the cases and a little bit of labeling, and that got us going. We did set on some circulation parameters for these devices. It was going to be on the main campus only. just so we can get a good idea of demand, usage, interest. We also decided early on this would be student only. We circulated for 1 week. This was a decision we made really as we looked at the scope and the purpose of this service. And from the beginning, we really decided that we, of course, didn't have the funds to be able to supplement and provide home internet to every student who doesn't have it or can't afford it. And so our focus and our purpose for this service really was meant as a supplement to home internet. And we repeatedly go back to that purpose because unfortunately there are lots of students who don't necessarily have reliable internet at home and maybe like to use the devices quite frequently. And so that is a real help to us to be able to keep that in focus and to share that with students as well as administrators and faculty, that this service really is just as a supplement and not as a substitute for home. So with that in mind, we went with a 1 week loan and a 1 week renewal. We do require a signature when they check out the device, and we'll look at that here in a minute. They get the tech policy also for the college. The agreement, the form that they look at, includes a bill structure, and we also needed to consider staffing needs. And this was also one of the things that we did really spend some time kind of thinking about and planning out who was going to be managing these, because it's not like they just, like a book, they don't just come back and you just set them on the shelf. They need to be charged. There's some maintenance along those lines that needs to happen. There's also some management as far as suspension of data, things like that we elected to use and implement. So there was some definite staffing requirements. And so we talked about all that, honed it down, and we now have one of our circulation leads manages the hotspots and actually does management for all of the campuses. So it does take time, but it's not an exorbitant amount of time and unreasonable.
Oh, hey, Rebecca, before you move on, this is Jessica again. There was a question in the chat asking how many total units you have, and maybe you covered it, but could you clarify how many units you, 58, all right. Yep.
So we started out small. At our campus, we started out with 20. The rep really wanted us to start with that many. I was a little bit hesitant. I tend to be one of these people who likes to keep things limited first, thinking it's easier to expand. But he really felt that we needed to start with 20 to get a sense of really the need and the turnover for a campus this size. And so we went with that. It was good. Once we were done with the spring and the summer, we started all the campuses with this service in the fall of 2017. And so that meant all 6 campuses now have these devices. So currently, college-wide, we have 58 devices, and that is at all of the campuses. On our campus, which is the largest, we have 25. And I'll tell you today, I just pulled some out. I pulled out a device of our cabinet, and we have all of them out except 3. So they are heavily used. But we feel like we've kind of settled on this. We actually upped to 58 in the fall of 2017, and we've just kind of sat there, not really feeling a need to increase that. And of course, your budget comes into play here. While the devices are certainly free, the service is not. For us, we are paying $40 a device per month. So that adds up. We were fortunate about the time that we went full scale. We had we saved some money through some state databases that were changed at the state level. And so we had some savings for that. And so some of that money then redirected towards the hotspots, which was great timing for us. So, it is expensive for sure. We do have a couple campuses that have pulled some of their own independent money. So the bulk of this is funded through district funds, what we call district funds or college funds. But some of the libraries have also pulled some funds in from their own campus in order to fund a device or two, so that they have extra. The older models I mentioned, the first ones we got, really did show some throttling. And so early on, and probably in about the first year or so, year and a half, we had throttling. And so that was something that we needed to be able to explain to students and understand ourselves and understand how the rotation of data through the month affects the throttling. Now that we have some new devices, those evidently don't seem to throttle, which is fantastic. So there for a while, we were kind of monitoring the devices on how many gigs had been used throughout the month. So as they came back, we were recording what their gig usage was so that we could anticipate when they would be full and when they aren't, and better being able to let students know how they can use that device when they take it out. So if something's throttled, if something has reached 25 gigs or more, your ability to stream video, for example, is going to be impacted. You can still go out and do lots of text-based things, get onto Blackboard, do, go to the library and look for articles, that kind of thing. But if you're needing to stream videos, for example, for your class, that may be impacted by the fact that we're having some throttling happening. So, so devices change a little bit as you replace devices. So the fact that we now have devices without throttling is great, just a little less maintenance on our end and better for the student. We also did decide to catalog these. Primarily in the beginning, we did it just so that students would have access to know whether or not we have any available. Ours are on a first come, first served basis, so there's no reserving them. So we actually have them cataloged. They're under Verizon Hotspots. If you go to our catalog, they can find them. They can't place holds on them, but they can certainly see if we have any out. And we do have a handful that are available throughout the college district as of today, but of course we probably have about 80% and 90% that are currently checked out. We didn't change much when we went full scale. As far as our circulation policy, we still left it at students only. And this is something that we've heard a little bit about from faculty who, of course, want to be able to have access to it. Initially, we probably heard more from adjunct faculty than from full-time faculty. But we really made the decision, again, based primarily on money, that we just couldn't afford to give everybody access to the internet, whether that meant every student having access all the time, or whether that meant access to the faculty and staff. So we really did limit this to students only. We have made a couple exceptions. We have had some faculty who are working as advisors in some capacity with student groups or coaches. We have an athletics program on one of the campuses. And so we've made exceptions to those faculty as they're doing, going on the road or traveling, doing projects with student groups. But pretty much we really hold true to that, and it's worked really well, just so that we just don't open that door and then start letting some do it and not others. We do require a student ID for it. It has to be a current student, can't be a student who is graduated or isn't currently enrolled. We do ask them to sign an agreement form every time they come in, even if they've done it in the past. So every time they come in, and we certainly do have repeat users, they have to sign an agreement form. And they get the text version, the reading part of that agreement, they take with them along with the tech policy. And they can do whatever they want with it, but at least then we've given it to them and they've seen it and they've signed off that they've seen it and received it. 1 week loan, that all stayed the same. They do have to renew in person. We did institute some late fees just to kind of encourage some more prompt return because demand was so high. We do have the ability to suspend service when a device is not returned on time or late. We typically give students a 1-day grace period. We don't necessarily advertise that, but if they're a day late and it returns that day, that's fine. We haven't suspended service. But if you go into the 2nd day overdue, service on that device is then suspended, which makes that device more like a paperweight than an internet provider. So that actually is quite helpful because that does help get those devices back. If they can't use it, they tend to return it. They do have to return it in person. They can't put it in the Dropbox. So some of these things are in the written agreement so that they see that anytime somebody is new to a device and hasn't used one or hasn't borrowed one before, we kind of walk through these things so that they're aware of it. And then the last thing we have is a billing. So if the device does not return at the 2-month time period, we will actually bill. And because the devices themselves are free and don't cost us anything, we actually bill for 2 months of service that we have continued to pay for. But that, even if it's suspended, we were paying for it, but nobody was able to use it. So that's really what our billing amount is for 2 months of service. And that also helps get the device back pretty quickly. But usually, for the most part, students are very good about getting it back on time. And if they happen to be late, the vast majority of them are returned once the device is suspended because they can't use it. So that has worked pretty well for us as well. Promotion was a big thing. We needed to know how to reach out to students, let students know, A, that we have them, and even B, what it is. So we actually really tried to work with people. Faculty and advisors was our biggest area of promotion because, number one, we really felt that they may know which students may really need this because maybe they've heard students comment in class, you know, I'm having a hard time getting my assignment done because my internet is out or I don't have internet. And so they may be able to really identify these students and then recommend this service to them. And so that's really how we started out and put a lot of energy into that. We also did flyers. We did announcements in the daily student newspaper, social media, those kinds of things. But I think our best bet was advisors and faculty and using the people. One of the things you'll note there on the bookmark and flyer, especially when we first started this program, we needed to be able to give students an idea on how much they can use. We didn't limit students to a particular amount of data that they could use. They can use whatever they needed, but we felt like we needed some kind of visual so that they understood, you know, kind of how much they were using and how that translated into the type of media that they were using, so that they could be aware if they were coming close to the 25 gigs, you know, do I have enough to stream this video I need to watch for my class, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where the bookmarks and the flyers came in. Here is a look at our storage area. So we just store these. This is the Ankeny campus. We store them in a locked cabinet. And you'll see the 3 devices sitting there on the top shelf. Those are the ones that are actually available for use. And you'll notice there's a white box down there on the 2nd shelf, and it has a label on it that reads slow hotspots. And this is how we manage the devices that actually have throttling that are part of their service. So anytime we have those older devices that are at 25 gigs when the throttling seems to kick in and they've been returned to us, we will check the amount of data that's been used, and if they're at 25 or right about 25 or over, we'll put them in that white sleeve there, that white box, because we use that as an identifier, and we'll pull from those last if we're all out on top. So if all of our other devices are being used, but we have some in the box, we'll pull those, but we'll let students know that there will be throttling. And so if they're needing to watch a video or something of that nature, that could impact their ability to do that. But if they're just needing to get on to check Blackboard or submit assignments or that kind of thing, text-based materials, they should be fine. So we still do currently use that. We still have a number of devices that are throttled. So that's handy. So that's just kind of how we manage that and circulate those after the other devices are gone, already checked out. Here is a look at what it is the student gets. So when they come to check it out, they have the device in the case, cables and cords. You'll see a small laminated, instruction card. And that just tells them how to use it. It is a really tight fit. Boy, they don't give you any room, and those plugs in particular are kind of hard to get in there, but it all works, and it's been good. Here's a look at the instructions that we actually use. So that laminated piece of paper there that's in the case actually tells the students how to use it. Again, if students are new to this process, we will actually walk them through the device. We'll show them how to use it and turn it on. One of the things we knew we wanted to do if we were going to do this is make this as simple as possible, so that students were able to use it without having to call the library or calling the college help desk to figure out how to use it. So 3 steps on the instructions. You turn on the hotspot, tells you where the power button is on the top of the device. Then you're going to use your device, your laptop or your tablet, whatever you're connecting, and you're going to connect to the Wi-Fi on that device. And on the back side of the hotspot, you'll see 2 labels. One, of course, is a barcode that we use to scan the device when we're checking it out. The other one is a label that contains the Wi-Fi, the name of the Wi-Fi. So that's the name you'll see on your laptop or your tablet as you're trying to connect. So we tell them where to find that, and then we also tell them what the password is. So the password is actually on the device.
Great.
That's it. That's all they need.
Wow, Rebecca, you have a couple questions. So the first was, how often do you have to charge them? And where and when do you charge them? And then we have a question about if the devices are free and you have some devices that are older or slower, can you return them to Verizon and request newer ones to avoid the throttle issue? And then another one just came in. Do you have any issues with cell tower coverage for students in rural areas? Have any students reported they can't access the internet at home using devices because of poor cell reception?
I'll answer the last one first. We have had only once or twice where we've had an issue with somebody not getting connected. And actually it wasn't because of a cell tower issue. It was actually an issue with the device itself. So connectivity hasn't been an issue in rural areas. We do check the devices when they come back, when they're returned. So if it needs to be charged, we have a charging station, which is just a table sitting next to a strip of outlets. And we just plug them in there and charge them. So we try to make sure that they're charged and ready to go as soon as they get back. And what was the second question, Jessica?
Right. So Leslie asks, if the devices are free and you have some devices that are older / slower, can you return them to Verizon and request newer ones to avoid the throttle issues?
Actually, that is something that I'll be visiting with my Verizon rep with next week. He's going to come out. We have a new rep, and that's one of the questions I'm going to be asking. Right now, we've received new devices because we have had to replace lost devices, or we've added new devices to our total number. So we actually haven't yet decided, I really want to upgrade these models. So that'll be my question on Wednesday when I meet with him. So we'll see what he says. Good questions. Okay, so you'll also notice there's a marker on there, and the AN on the back side of that device actually indicates which campus it is on. Because we have some campuses, or a lot of our students take classes on different campuses or multiple campuses. they're allowed to return the device to whatever campus they're on. So if they want to return this device, which is an Ankeny device, to the Boone campus, they can do that. So that indication there just lets the staff know that it actually needs to come back to the Ankeny campus. So we try to make it as really quick and easy as we can, easy for them to use. All they have to do is really pretty much turn it on and connect to Wi-Fi just like they would anywhere else. So that's really how you use it. Pretty simple. Here's a look at the forms that we have. This is what students see when they come and check things out. The document on the left is kind of our front agreement for the signature page. So it highlights things that students need to be aware of, that you have to handle it in a certain way, make sure it's not hot. Here are the pieces that are in your case that you need to make sure are returned with the case. We have had a couple instances where the wrong cord has been returned with the case. That's usually just an easy fix, quick call or email out to the student. Letting students know that they can't drop it in the book drop, it has to come back. So some of those things, fine structure, all that stuff is on that front cover on the left document there. The middle document is actually attached to that left document, and this is the page that we have the student sign, just acknowledging that they've read the agreement. And we actually then keep this document. We actually file it. It's in a file right next to our Circ desk. And we note the number of the hotspot. That's really helpful when we're working with our catalog and trying to manage these devices. So all the devices have a number on them that's really usable just to the staff. But anyway, we keep track of date it's been renewed, those kinds of things, any notes or problems that we see. And then we keep these until the device is returned. And then we'll pull them, we'll mark them returned, make sure everything's good to go. And we actually have kept a hold of these for a few months so that we can pull these names and get access to a survey of students who have used it. So that's really what the purpose is. So these have been really handy for us. This just is another way for us to kind of keep tabs on them. We also, my circulation lead also will go through these. Instead of checking the catalog, we'll go through these to see which ones are overdue and which ones need to be suspended. It's just a little quicker glance through to see which of these are past their 1 day of grace. So that's kind of how he uses those.
Okay. We were getting some more questions.
Okay.
So from Liz, how do you determine how many devices are at each campus? How do they move between campuses? And then Lisa asks, and I can repeat these, but if they break it, do they get banned from checking out additional devices, or do they just pay a fine of some sort? And then finally, Liz asks again, would you also be willing to share the survey that you send out?
Sure, absolutely. I will send that survey. So I'll send that to Jessica and she can put it out there. So we don't, if the device is broken, we've only had that happen, I think, actually once. And then we really do kind of leave that charge, some kind of a monthly charge probably for that, depending on how long it is. I guess the situation in which we had, the device had been out for about a month and a half and before it came back. And so, so we actually charged part of that, that fee that it would cost us to actually subscribe to it. If the device actually broke maybe within the week that they were using it, you know, probably we tend to be pretty lenient about that stuff. Since the device didn't actually cost us anything, it's really hard for me then to turn around and charge them for something. So probably we would not charge them. We would just simply order a replacement, which will be free. So have a conversation with the student, you know, see what happened, see if it was really a neglect of use of some kind, have a chat with them. You know, sometimes things just happen and, you know, it certainly may have been an accident, you know. So that's just probably how we would handle it. And I forget what the first question was.
How did you determine how many devices are at each campus? And then how do they move between campuses?
So it really was kind of a guess, unfortunately, on how many devices. We did, from the pilot, we actually did track the number of circulations for each device and how long they were out and whether or not they renewed. So we had a sense then of how much of a demand there was, at least for the pilot. So then we could kind of use that to assess, you know, if these are out all the time and they're always being renewed, then we've got a really high demand. You know, if they're going out for a day or two and then being returned, you know, maybe we don't need as many. So that's really kind of what we looked at. The college has a contracts with a courier. Actually, it's an AEA courier. And so that's how they route between campuses. So it's just a courier. Great questions. And the document on the right there is actually the technology use policy for the college. So the document on the left and the document on the right are actually the pieces that the student takes with them each time. And so they see these documents every time they come to check it out. And for us, this was a way for us to ensure that every time everybody sees this. Personally, I just didn't feel comfortable making sure that we made some kind of note in the patron record to say, yes, this student has seen and written and signed these agreements. I didn't want to track it that way. I wanted to be really certain that if we're going to be handing out internet devices, that I knew for certain that they always knew what these policies were. And so that's what we do. So, you know, sometimes the students will turn right around, and if they've seen this policy a million times and they, you know, borrowed a device quite frequently, they know what's in them. They'll just probably chuck them in the trash. But at least they've seen them, and at least we know that they go out every time. Okay, so here's a look at some of the stats. We did this. This is a look at our first couple years. Of course, we're not done with 2019 yet. So you can see a big jump between 2017 and 2018 in the fall. And this would be college-wide. The middle one is Ankeny only, and that shows you our teeny tiny little trial in the spring term. So that's spring term only. Interestingly, when I pulled these, I thought it was interesting that we were down a little bit last year. So, you know, that's one of the things that we'll start to look at is monitoring the stats to see if perhaps there's a time and place when this service is no longer needed, that, you know, either internet connectivity is just improved that much more, or it's available more places, so that this just isn't needed. So we'll be tracking that to see if anything changes.
That's interesting. Okay, a few more questions. Do you have the same group of students always using the devices, or is there a large number of students rotating through them? And then she says, what circulation and maybe ILS are you using? Like, what's your circulation system?
Yep. We use OCLC's WMS. So that's what we use, and it works well. So we've got them all cataloged under one record, and then just all of the records, item records, barcodes underneath that one main bib record. And we have a mix, whether or not we're having the same group of students check it out. You know, that really changes semester to semester. I don't know what other community colleges are like, but you know, we tend to see a bit of a change semester to semester. And we certainly will absolutely have students who repeatedly use the devices. And again, that's kind of where we fall back again to our purpose of having this service is not necessarily to provide permanent home solution for internet, but it's really meant as a supplement. One of the things that we do ask students to do is once they're up, so if they've checked it out for a week and maybe they've renewed it for another week, they need to return that device for 24 hours before they can check it out again. That just helps us ensure that other people have access to it. So sometimes, yes, we do have the same students who come, and maybe it's the first, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 weeks of the semester, and they want to use it all the time. Sometimes it's off and on throughout the semester. You'll see them, 5 or 6 times coming to check out a device. So it just depends.
Okay, we got more questions coming in. So Lisa asks, do you pay the $40 a month for each device, even if the device isn't checked out or activated?
We do. So we do pay that. You have an option to suspend a device while making a payment, which is typically most of the suspensions that we do. So if a device is 2 days overdue, we will suspend it with payment. You do have the option to suspend without payment, and we've just started doing that a couple times. If we have a device that is fairly long overdue, but we haven't billed yet, or we're getting ready to bill, and we think we can get the device back. The issue with suspending without payment is that it taxes that time period. So if you suspend like for a month or 2 without payment, it extends your agreement with Verizon on that particular device before you can upgrade it.
Okay, interesting. There's another question from Jessie, and she says, if you have a wait list, do you have any issues with students not picking up the devices when one becomes available for them?
So that was also another thing we really talked about in the beginning, is whether or not to do a wait list. And we actually we opted not to do a wait list, just because we were having such high demand and we couldn't figure out the best way to do that. So that it was equitable and fair, and so that we didn't run into some of these issues with, people not checking it out, but then somebody else needed it. So it really is on a first come, first served basis. And it's worked well for us. We have revisited that a couple times, but we have just decided we just don't think we need it.
Okay, great. And then the last question is, what's your FTE?
The college FTE is just under 13,000. So we actually have one campus that only has one device. We have another campus that has 6, and a couple of those devices are licensed or paid for out of their own budget, as well as library budget. And then I think we've got one that's got about 10 devices, one that's got about 12, and then Ankeny has 25. So spread out quite a bit, and that seems to work. We seem to be at a good point right now. So we'll continue to look at usage and track that, so that we're not paying a lot for extra devices that seem to be sitting. We'll just cancel those lines. Okay, here is just a quick look at number of devices that we lost or have never been returned. It's actually a pretty low number. So these are devices that we just have never gotten back. We've billed them, we've suspended them, and just never gotten it back. So we just issue a replacement for these. We get a free replacement from Verizon and just add them back into our collection. Student feedback. This was one of the questions on the survey. We wanted to know if 1 week loan period was good enough, because that was a bit of a guess on our part, wanting to keep this as a supplement and not as a replacement for internet service. So we started out with a 1 week loan period, and that really seems to suffice for most people. This was a small sample. This was about 40 respondents to the survey. And so we feel pretty good about the 1 week. They do have an option to renew for another week, but then at that point they need to return the device. And of course, we always have students who are wanting it longer. And sometimes we have faculty who are wanting it longer for their students, who kind of advocate for that. And so for us, knowing what our purpose was and that we're really a supplement has been something that we've come back to time and time again. So for us, that's been really important. Why did you borrow it? Here's some of the survey results here. Of course, we absolutely have students who don't have any access to the internet at home. And our college, like probably most of yours, are doing more and more things online. And even if they aren't taking a completely online course, we have here at this college, we have something called web blended courses where they have a mix of attendance in a seat in a classroom somewhere, as well as Blackboard online use. And we just last year moved all of our grading to Blackboard. So even if you're in a traditional classroom where you come in every day and you sit, your grades are posted in Blackboard. So, so internet's a big thing. So being able to have access to it is important. The one thing I would say that's not on here that we also have had a lot of people comment on is travel. So they're traveling to mom and dad's house or grandma's house for the weekend or whatever, and they don't have access. So they want to be able to work while they're, or study, do homework while they're traveling.
So we have one question that came in again from Tammy, and she asks, does the student stay restricted at the campus level until he or she pays or returns the device?
So actually, we have our college management system is Banner. And so when a device is overdue, we will actually put a non-financial hold on their record. And that hold applies across the college. So that means that primarily what that means is that they can't register for classes or they can't get grades, things like that, until this is resolved. And so in addition to suspending the device, we actually put a non-financial hold on right away. If we get to the point where it's been 2 months and the device hasn't come back and we're actually going to bill for the service that hasn't been available, then we actually put a financial hold on. So they'll actually see a dollar amount and they need to resolve that before they can have access to registration and things like that. Now we gave up fines for the most part at the library a few years ago, and so we actually have no overdue fines. This is the one thing that we have fines on, and it's $1 a day up to $20 for a late fine, because we had such high demand. Again, I think the vast majority of our students are really good about getting it back, but we do, you know, we do collect fines on these. You know, if students got a good reason why they couldn't, we take that into consideration, and sometimes we'll waive those fines. But our Banner system is across the district, the college, and so any hold on there will affect their ability to do anything college-wide. Here's a question about the rank of value, what the students think about having a hotspot available to them. This is a little bit hard to read because it's actually ranking a couple of statements, but the #1 ranking is the long blue line you see with the arrow there. And that is the statement that they love it, and having access to this has been extremely helpful to my classwork. So that was their #1 statement out of all of those that they could select. And so students who are using this are finding this really beneficial, just for a variety of reasons. Now, we do have some economic diversity in our college, and so not everybody has access to it. And even if you have access to it, maybe you're moving in to campus and it's, you know, early September and you still don't have internet yet. Or maybe, again, you're traveling somewhere and you want to be able to work on your homework over the weekend while you're traveling. So there are just lots of reasons why students are using this, but clearly students who are using it very much appreciate having access to it. So lessons learned, of course. Lots of things we've learned, of course, is probably the #1 thing is that there is actually a need for our students. Again, this is something that was not data driven. So I don't know that we could have pointed to it and said for sure that this was a need. About a year into our full-scale implementation, I had a conversation with an administrator, and he was shocked that students would need this, and really questioned whether or not there was a need, because everywhere has internet. You can go to Starbucks and you have internet. But I think he was forgetting that, you know, not all of our students go to Starbucks. Not all of our students can afford to go buy coffee or transportation to go to Starbucks. Not everybody's grandparents have, or parents have it at home. Not everybody can afford to pay the cost. So there really is a need, maybe not for every student, but certainly a need at different times. The other thing is that if you do this, you may have faculty who want to do this, who want to have access to it. This was, again, just a decision we made early on, that we just didn't have the funds to be able to implement a service for faculty as well. And I wasn't sure how we would even do that. You know, I feel like our focus really is on students and student needs versus faculty, and how do you run that if you're using from the same pool of devices. And so anyway, we just really decided that just was not an area we can go down. If the administration felt that was a need, then maybe they would be willing to fund that and we could work something out. So something we did learn early on is that these devices, like your phone probably, come with international roaming and texting. So early on, we had statements that had international roaming and texting. Not necessarily that people were taking the devices out of the country, but maybe they were. But for example, I had actually taken a device. This was early on when we got it. And I was in Maine, and I was actually pinging a tower in Canada. And so there was a charge. So those are things that you might want to turn off so that you don't just have these surprise charges coming in. The other thing that we decided early on that we were not going to do is monitor how students are using it. So especially in the early days when we had all of our devices had throttling issues, you know, it would go out and 2 days it would come back and, you know, the student had used 35 gigs. And we just made a decision that I didn't want to monitor how they were using it. The assumption is that they're using it for whatever they need for school or for whatever, just like we don't monitor how they're going to use anything else in our collection. So we did monitor the amount of data used, but that was only so that we could track usage and need and that kind of thing, but not why they were using it. Good vendor rep is huge. Ask your faculty and advisors to help promote. They are great people who know students who can use this. And then continue reassessing the need as it comes up. Do you still need this? Do you need more? Just continue to reassess it. General comments from students. Of course, they love it, they want it, all that kind of stuff. Any other questions that anybody has? I know we're probably getting up close to the time here.
Yep, we have just a few minutes left, so we can take any last questions. But if we don't have questions, we've kind of done a good job of addressing them throughout the presentation. But yes, excellent session, and we'll thank Rebecca for sharing. Forward Focus will send you a conference recap. We have a LibGuide page that will include the conference recording, the documents that Rebecca shared with us, and we'll send that out probably early next week, so be on the lookout for that. And yes, Jim is posting that the next session is at 12:30, so Central Time, so we're going to take a quick break. But once again, I mean, a round of virtual applause for Rebecca, and we thank you so much for your contribution and sharing your experience with Hotspots with us today.
Thank you all.
Yep, great.